let UAG be good for the 16 series. Today we're looking at a whole bunch of cases from UAG. The Civilian, the Essential Armor, the Monarch Pro, the Pathfinder, the Metropolis LT, and the Plasma XTE. Oh, and even the Plyo. Let's start with the Civilian. At this point, I want to record a podcast with the lead designer of UAG because why?
But why?
Is it because of the magnet placement? Why remove these soft silicone sides, which were so comfortable? Who prefers the harder plastic sides? That unique looking backplate design, gone. They made it almost completely flat now. They still kept the design stripes though, and only 1 millimeter of elevation to still give the design impression of the Civilian. But there is a positive to that too, as the Magsafe strength is the best it's ever been. The bottom feels hard, not soft, and even a little pointy. And like I said, they got rid of that soft side design, so it's back to plastic. The camera control button is a cutout, which is pretty big, but I generally like the way it feels. So it would only be a complaint as far as the looks go, were it not for the fact that due to its bulky round corners, it's now a little more difficult to use. You have to angle your finger a little bit in order to use it, which is making me not want to use that button at all. I don't know if it's the fact that it's not comfortable to use like that due to the size of the case or the way your finger sits on that button, but I digress. Then there's also the fact that it isn't a full cutout, but they opted for a silicone piece to connect the two, which is fine, but then they made it angled, so that now it feels a little pointy when you hold your phone regularly. This is also an issue I noticed on the Fold 6 cases, so it seems to be a bigger trend. Now I know case designers and case makers are on a tight schedule, but maybe testing out the product would do wonders here.
Have you ever used it?
Don't get me wrong, this isn't a I dislike cutouts rant, but here I notice it because of its size. But luckily that's it for the negatives. Now over to the positives. I love the orange accent in the camera bump, which looks awesome. The buttons are upgraded and are very clicky and really comfortable to use. It's only the action button which is ever so slightly more difficult to press. The texture on the back, I think that changed too. It's now a little more noticeable of a texture, which still feels comfortable but will increase grip. The question is, did it need it? I never thought this case was slippery at all back when it had these soft sides. Now on the front, the orange detail also changed slightly, whereas before it was on both sides of the front protection, and now it's only on the inner half, which looks better in my opinion. The fit is also excellent. Great fit, good click to it as well, and it feels really secure. I also love that design aspect on the sides here, whereas the backplate sort of folds in. Looks really advanced. The Civilian is 50 grams or 1.67 ounces. Then there's also the Monarch Pro, which is always available in multiple colors and materials. This time I got my hands on the titanium colorway. Once again, a major upgrade in Magsafe strength, and you love to see it. Where the Civilian is way flatter, here it's even more defined, and it's all looking great. The case lays completely flat on a table due to the special corner pieces, which is another great feature this case offers. The buttons are very tactile and clicky, the way it should be. On the sides we see that honeycomb pattern too, which always looks great, but then we get to the bottom, whereas this exact piece is very sharp, and legit sharp this time around. It's very uncomfortable to hold with your pinky finger. It's such a shame, because something as dumb as a sharp piece there makes this case less desirable. And like I said earlier, why don't they test these? But whatever they do, they seem to get the dimensions right every time, because the fit here is once again excellent. Something else I noticed is that the camera bump is slightly smaller than previous generations. I think it's still perfectly fine though, since the camera is protected by the thickness of the case itself too, and in this way the case can lay flatter than it could back then. The toughness aesthetic is really done nicely. The screws and the titanium colorway looks very nice. The camera control button is a big cutout here too, which works out and is comfortable enough to work. I think that has to do with the shape at the corners, whereas with the Civilian they are all rounded and here they have a straight edge. Still not ideal for a bulky case. Now UAG, please fix that sharp piece at the USB-C port and we've got an amazing case here. Maybe even make a USB-C cover for these and use that silicone of the cover as a cushion for your fingers. It fits the bulky cases and I'm sure there would be a market for it. I mean, I'm here if you want ideas.
Absolutely not.
The Monarch Pro is 63 grams or 2.22 ounces. Now this year I have two iPhones, so for the Pathfinder we'll switch to the 16 series with that new camera bump to showcase that too. Since all of these cases are pretty much the same except for the camera bump, the findings are universal. The Pathfinder has gotten a Magsafe upgrade as well, so here it's very strong too. Very clicky and useful buttons, easy to find, and just like the rest, a button for the action button, which was a cutout a year ago. Now even though not perfect, the bottom is not sharp here. The new camera bump has gotten the attention it deserves too, with that triangle shape, instead of the usual cutout some case manufacturers choose. It also features those straight edges which make it easier to operate the camera control button, which by the way has a big rectangle cutout again, and is comfortable enough to operate. Now even though I like this different design on these sides, I must repeat myself and tell you that the honeycomb pattern is much grippier than this version. And they should really make use of that titanium color on these screws here as well, to make it look even tougher. On the backplate we have that unique design going on, which you can feel, but the edges are not sharp or annoying at all to hold. Since on the backplate is lower than the edge there too, so it feels unique. The iPhone Series 16 case is 38 grams, so it should be like 50 grams or 1.76 ounces for the 16 Pro Max. Then there's also the Metropolis LT. Features that same set of clicky buttons and even that cutout for the camera controller here too. That camera control button is easier to operate due to the fact that the corners here aren't as thick. In fact, it feels like a slim UAG case in comparison. Even though not visible from the outside, it does feature Magsafe and that same strong set of magnets too, which I did not expect due to that Kevlar material on the backplate, which by the way feels a lot like nylon. They feature this unique camera bump for the 16 series here too, which is great, so no need to change it. For the 16 Pro Max, that will be a regular square. Sadly, they brought back that sharp bottom, so as far as comfort goes, I wouldn't really score it too high. Really secure fit though, and a little too much when you try to remove it, but it's still doable. I would definitely be at ease with this case around my iPhone. But since you pay the price for that DuPont Kevlar, there is definitely better options out there. The Plyo or Plyo Pro, since it does have that Magsafe, not sure why they got rid of that naming, but it's still a good case. It looks great, offers a lot of protection, feels grippy, and it does not matter what color iPhone you have, it will always look good. They offer ones with smoked edges as well, for if you're scared of yellowing. But they've noticed that too and made these sides of a stiffer material. So gone are the days of that soft, transparent silicone, which were very comfortable, but it was indeed inevitable that they would eventually yellow. I therefore believe them that on this version, the yellowing should be a lot less. No sharp edges here, and luckily that also counts for the USB-C port, so it's very comfortable to hold. Very clicky buttons as well, which if I recall correctly are ever so slightly larger than previous years, which I like. Still a lot of front protection and a strong plastic camera ring to protect the set of lenses. The fit is very secure but easily removed, so it gets my seal of approval for sure. Then there's also the Essential Armor, a relatively flexible case which still feels very strong. Strong Magsafe magnets, easily installed because the case is flexible, and also removed just as easily. But all just so easy without losing any security at all. You cannot accidentally push off these corners, so it will most definitely not happen during dropping. I really like it. The camera bump is that triangle again, with a very small but strong ring around the set of lenses. More than enough to protect it. The corners are flattened, but still very much visible. This will absorb most of the damage when dropping them. And the material doesn't feel like it will look ugly after a drop, which I saw happen with a lot of cases during my 15 Pro drop test. UAG in general passed that test, so if you haven't seen that, make sure you do. Very clicky buttons which are easy to find, look great and are easy to press too. No sharp edges or nothing, so that's awesome. The corners are a little too big to comfortably use the camera control button though, so they really should be looking into making a button for these thicker cases. But just like my last video for the 15 Pro, they fixed the action button cutout like a month or two after. So I'm confident that they will at least do something. And then last but not least, the Plasma XTE. They have more colors for this case as well now, so not just the black. For example, the ash version. I chose this one especially since I thought the Magsafe ring, which acts like a kickstand too, would be a very similar color to my Desert Titanium. Unfortunately, it doesn't really match up as well as I hoped. And the gray doesn't look as great either. So I would still go for the black one, or maybe the clear case version, which looks great too. The buttons are as clicky and great to use as with the Essential Armor. So that's awesome too. The kickstand is usable horizontally, but also vertically. Although when you use it horizontally, I think the angle is a little off. So yes, it's usable, but it could be better. The hinge will make sure it's closed properly every time, which works well and feels really premium. No sharp edges here, so the XTE is safe to use as well. The XTE suffers from that problem I mentioned multiple times now regarding that corner and the camera control button. So it's the same here too. Now you could use that kickstand on the back as a grip as well. It's not sharp and it can sort of lean into your hands, which works well. The Magsafe strength is also really good, but since the magnets are made into the kickstand, sometimes it will pop out the kickstand along with it. Not a big deal though if you pull from the other side, but it's something you must think about to do, since the other way, for me at least, is the most natural way of removing it. The fit is good, although on the edge of being too easy to remove. I couldn't replicate it snapping off the phone with falling, which means it passed the testing and is good, but only by a small margin. Now make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell button to get notified of my uploads, since you don't want to miss the next lineup video.